What you are about to see is a real-life story. The accounts have gone into great detail to give each side's version of this, an exclusive one, we understand. One of the most talked about.
Hello, and welcome to PiFi number 109. I'm here with Breaker, and he's a code breaker. How are you doing, Breaker?
Doing great. How are you doing, Tony?
Good. Should I have referred to you as Breaker in the title? I can always change that.
It doesn't really matter. That pedal power work bikes thing, that's kind of my own grift. I've been developing products for probably like over 10 years, doing work for other companies overseas and just trying to get my own product line off. So I get into code breaking and I just kind of slap it all together on my Twitter page because, it's no sense in trying to fight like 7 profiles just to get some attention.
Right. No, that's how I kind of know you on Twitter or X. So that's why I use that. So, but anyway, welcome to the show.
Thanks,
and
man.
We're here to talk about the Beal Ciphers, which I knew very little about until you started talking to me about it a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very interesting. So I thought what we would do, unless you want to kind of give a little a quick intro to yourself, or we can go right into the story of the Beal Ciphers. What do you want to do?
Let's do the Beal.
That sounds good. So just tell us sort of a high-level overview, and then we can kind of get into some of the detail.
Sure. Yeah, so the Beal Papers was a pamphlet that was created and published in 1885 by a Confederate cartographer named J.B. Ward. And when it was published for an unusually high amount of money, for 50 cents. So it wasn't like, a 10-center. It wasn't a pulp fiction kind of novel. People looked at it and were kind of like, well, we'll buy it. There were a few copies distributed. Then at a certain point, the publisher stopped publishing. And it was kind of strange because it was published in the Library of Congress. It had the official records. And so there were very few copies that were left over. But what was inside of it were 3 ciphers. And it spoke about just a huge amount of money that was buried in a cache secretly somewhere in Virginia.
Huh. I was going to try to share this Facebook page that has the image of it says solving the Beal Papers. I didn't know if there was any images on there. Okay. Is there any images you want me to bring up? Just let me know.
If you want to start, I guess you can. There's really nothing to show from that page, I guess, in a sequence, in an order. But I did do an article recently with Popular Mechanics. So that was like a brand new article that was released. And that's in the November-December issue. It's kind of like a long interview with Dave Howard from, he's like their former editor. And he came out and just basically wanted to do like an overview and took maybe 3 different phone interviews with me, and we banged some emails back and forth just so he could get an idea of what the whole puzzle was about and how I had actually worked to break the ciphers.
Do you want me to share the article?
Yeah, if you want to put the put the mainframe of the article up, or show one of the cover photos or something like that, feel free to do that. You can link any of that stuff you want to.
Okay. This is the Popular Mechanics. Let's see. I'm trying to bring it up now. But anyway, while I'm doing that, can you just go ahead and kind of give some more on the story itself?
Yeah, the Beal ciphers were unique because nobody back then had really been into treasure hunting. They were just kind of like, I guess you could say, just settled down in Virginia in the backcountry, and they were just kind of hillbillies and country town folk and just normal average Americana kind of people. But what it did is it kind of sparked a gold rush in people, because it was kind of intended to inspire people to just start searching around in Virginia. And everything that was in the ciphers and everything that was in the story it came about kind of like I guess you can say like a strange mystery that was added to it of an undertone about some guys that went out west and got, kind of killed. They just never returned. So the objectives in the Beal ciphers in the paper itself were based on trying to encourage people to go look for these guys missing troves. It was basically like kind of saying, hey, here's a bunch of gold. We tried to solve a puzzle. We found out something about it, but we weren't able to find the location. So we're trying to publish a manual so everybody goes out treasure hunting in Virginia, which is kind of weird. Everyone kind of took it as fiction, They just thought it was like another novel that was being produced. But in reality, the ciphers themselves held like groundbreaking discoveries that were inside of them. They were extremely detailed ciphers once you got down to trying to break into the codes. The cover story kind of looked interesting. It was printed in an old typeset kind of format. It wasn't really so much modern of the time at 1885. And it was made and dressed up to kind of look like it was from an older time period. And on the cover, it said authentic statements. So it was kind of like, well, maybe something inside of it is real or based on fact. And in reality, what you get into is you find a bunch of information that is inside of it that just kind of stands out as being out of time, out of the time period. So we're talking like it's published in the 1880s, but in reality, in the 1880s, they had a different kind of like wording to the way that they were printing, a different kind of context to their descriptive nature, and they used different overall kind of words in the Beale that kind of stood out as being from 1885, even though the storyline told everyone that it was from 1819 and 1821. So it just kind of looked like there was some confusion in it, and there was something out of place that just didn't fit with what they were trying to say. But regardless of what your interpretation was from everything, you end up getting into a hard, like a really hardened kind of investigative kind of report that you just can't break out of, because you just come to the term with what you're reading that none of it is actually 100% authentic like they say it is. So
let me ask you a question about ciphers. Because I'm a little confused at how this works, to be honest with you. So you have this story of this old gold mine, right? Or you have an article about it, right?
Right.
And
Well,
then the cipher is explain to people exactly what a cipher is. I've kind of
okay.
got this image up here on the that I'm sharing. I don't know if any of this is related to.
Oh yeah, that's Beal cipher number 1. What that is 1 out of 3 ciphers that were found inside of the pamphlet. And the storyline goes that some guy came to an inn and he basically was handing a box over to somebody and said, hey, this box is filled with information about our hunting party that we're going out west. And if we don't return in 10 years, I want you to open the box and then, just follow the instructions that are inside of it. So this guy left a box at some random inn with some guy he didn't even know. And, he apparently just leaves all the keys to all of his gold stashed in Virginia. The gold was stashed and deposited in Virginia, but they went out west on a hunting party and they found a bunch of gold while they were hunting. And so they decided to form a team, and they called it in the papers, they called it a military order, a military-like order that they had formed amongst themselves. And so that stands out right there as being like, okay, these guys
like a militia, you mean?
You're right. Yeah, they're like like they have a lieutenant, they have sergeants, they have, they're basically like had some kind of military training. And if you look into it, the author of the papers, J.B. Ward, he was a Confederate cartographer. He was a map maker. And so he was
I still want people to understand the process here, where, because I'm a little confused at when the document, when a document or the paper or article, whatever it is created, do people purposely install the code in there, or is the cipher just created from what is already written?
Well, that's the thing. You can have either of those options built into a cipher. Like with a cipher, you can encrypt anything you want. You can type a bunch of information up and then hit a button nowadays, and it'll translate it into one of maybe like 100 different types of encryption systems. But in reality, these utilize what's called a classic cryptogram system. And a classic cryptogram system dates back all the way to like 1600s, or even back to even further into the 100 BC kind of era, when the Greeks and the Romans were having their battles with the Persians. So I mean, there's dozens of systems that were created over a period of time. What you're trying to do is you're trying to figure out what time period this all fits into, where the general kind of understanding of, what was being studied and what was being used at that time period, what were the most popular types of ciphers encryption. And then you're trying to identify certain keys or certain, marks that are inside of it that stand out in a certain way. So in the Beale,
let me ask you a question though about the term cipher.
Okay.
I'm looking at these rows of numbers, and
Right.
then let's say this text over here that you wrote about the Beale papers, okay, over here on the right, okay,
Right.
Okay, where am I? Okay, so I don't know. Let me see if I can see what I'm talking. Yeah, the part over on the far right, it says solving the Beale papers. When you wrote this, you had two options, right? You could either use verbiage that later on was deciphered, or you could write this article or these paragraphs and then go and say, no, I want to make a cipher, which might be this thing over here on the left, that created a message I wanted someone to understand. Is it that right? The cipher is the thing on the left, or is the cipher in the when you use the term cipher, sometimes I think you're talking about both the unencrypted part and the encrypted part.
Well, the cipher is the mystery part. So when it says the locality of the vault at the top of the page and the numbers are there, they just look like a bunch of random numbers. So everyone's saying, okay, what do these numbers mean? Well, it says that he had directly found 3 ciphers inside of the box. And so you just basically look at the numbers and you start saying, how is it going to break down? Well, he tried to work for years, is what he had said, and that in the cipher, he was trying to break out information about it. So he figured that these numbers related to the word counts in a book or in like a paper. So he said he was like, he was just creating a storyline. Of course, this whole thing is fiction and there's an underlying theme. But in his story, he was telling the story so that way you'd get the inflection that each one of these numbers related to a letter that came out of a actual book or an actual like like a paper of some kind. In which case he says, okay, I worked and I used the Declaration of Independence as one of my book codes as a template, and he transposed all the numbers that were in these actual pamphlets over to the next. On the next cipher, he basically used the Declaration of Independence by counting every single word out and then assigning whatever number that was in the cipher to whatever word was there. And then he would use the first letter of the words for that.
So in that case, the Declaration of Independence obviously was already written. Okay, right. So the cipher is this code that tells you how to. Because I'm still misunderstanding terminology, right? Sometimes I feel like you're talking about the Declaration of Independence is the cipher, and then this is just some sort of code. But
the code is made to say, okay, go use this, go grab this word, count all the words in the declaration, use this word, and then whatever the first letter is from that word, that's what the number translates to.
So in that case, which is the actual cipher? This thing that with the numbers or the information in the document?
The locality of the vault. But you just jumped on something really important. It's actually both, because in the document, believe
That's
it or
why
not,
I'm confused.
right? Well, you see, if you tried to use the Declaration of Independence on all these other ciphers, there's 3 of them, you wouldn't get any information out of it. It was kind of like a ruse. It was called a null, and everybody tried different books. Like there were guys that looked through like all of these books of the time period to try and figure out what book it was that would translate it, and they couldn't find anything that was in it. But if you go read the pamphlet, you'll run into, which is really cool, you'll run into a bunch of paragraphs that they have misspellings, they have punctuation problems, they have like extra spaces added. And this thing was professionally typeset. So whoever did it like arranged all the different little, sections of type to be moved in a certain configuration. And so that way, you see how these in the middle section, there's, letters that are blocked in from different lines, and they kind of combine together. So like right in the middle, it says, you say PS, FM, and then PYKK, right? Your mouse was almost on it right there. To
right
the
here,
left.
to spy.
Well, to spy, obviously you can see that, like he's trying to, speak to somebody, but it almost kind of looks like there's a lot of filler that's inside of it, kind of blocking it out. And the reason for that is to create like a way that, say somebody just stumbled on the way to break the code and they were suspecting that they were onto it, right? So they'd go ahead and start breaking the code using their method, but it would just start looking like a lot of jarble. So the way they hid everything was in kind of a format, so it would create like a physical design of what was being spoken about. And now here in this one, you've got basically a systemization of pattern numbers, and you can see I highlighted them in the red box with the lines that are drawn there at that top part. There's the number 64, and then there's 3 numbers of 64. So it forms a triangulation. And then there's the number 18, and then 416, and then 416 again. Those are underlined going diagonal. And you can kind of see that they're working with, 18 to 18, and then 416 and 416. They're trying to draw a pattern of recognition. And the numbers.
So you're saying that it's not that this 64 could just be creating a zone to where the information is inside of that triangle, and the 64 and the L may not have any significance? Or
what they were trying to do is they were trying to create a message with the blocks that were created in, but then they wanted to put a second layer on top of it that would act as a map. And if you scroll down, you'll see another example of the mapping that is there that they put in. And there's a line drawn from the number 81 all the way down to the other number 81 that's there. And if you look closely at the letters, it's CVT, but the V acts as a U, so it's cut. And then I didn't highlight it in this format, but the word right next to it is HERE. So it's cut here, and then it goes all the way down over. It goes through another CUT, which is right in the middle of the line. You're pointing right at it, UTC. Mm-hmm. It's UTC. So it's cut here on the left, cut there, and then there's a cut, a CT at the final end. And that's just above and below the 81. They use the patterns to kind of stand out as kind of a guide. And if you scroll over to the next side, if you just scroll right and then bring it down some, what I did was those numbers kind of confuse you. So what I did was in this block of text where it's just got the cut shown right there, just kind of diagonally cut across. Yeah, right there. So I took all the numbers out so that way I compressed all the letters together and their positions, and it shows an actual physical positioning of a bunch of the different words that are inside of it. And the guy's name was Thomas Jefferson Beale, so TJB in blue right at the bottom, and then it goes into Maricopa, Arizona, which was the county name that they had chosen for it. Bush Road, Dam, Fenn.
Where do you see Maricopa, Arizona?
Maricopa, Arizona is on the left in between the blue letters of the box, and there's Maricopa. It's kind of anagrammed right there.
Yeah.
Yep. And then there's Bush Road, which is obviously, it's just a road that's inside of it's the old military road that they called it Bush Road after a certain time period, after the military already mapped everything out of their explorations. And then there's a dam, and they, you can see it in red, it's DAM, and they kind of created a dam along the Rio Salado, and then it says Fenn, FHENN, which is a, to the right, one more there, and the Fenn is a swamp. And basically, it's kind of like a unique area that's below the dam. It's just kind of like a low water kind of area with a lot of foliage and a lot of, wildlife that hangs out there. And then you've got at the bottom, it looks like some dice. And it just says, for him that can find Jacob Waltz's mines. And if you're just reading across, you can see on the right side the word Jacob is there. And then Waltz is right here. They're basically drawing lines or positioning those words specifically. So it draws out an outline of the area. And I don't know if you have, do you have the email that I had sent you that has the, all of the tiles? If you go to the email, we can kind of walk through some of the physical locations that are there too. They, that little piece of paper you saw with the cut with the tear in it, you see how it's got the tear right there? This brown piece of paper, if you scroll down, that tear is then shown on the other on the cipher there. So you can kind of see they're symmetrical to a degree. And he's trying to draw like an area of a river that's, actually physically cut into it. That's found in the cipher using numbers that are patterned.
Are you saying with this information that was someone able to locate, or was this a mythical location, but you found?
Oh no, it's fully descriptive. It's it takes you right to the base of a location, and this is the thing. What they're talking about here, you don't know where it's at until you break the other ciphers that are inside of the actual writing of the letter. So if you pull up that email. And those tiles that are on the email that I sent you, that one has all the internal ciphers that show a more descriptive context of where the actual gold mines are at. And that's pretty much how I found them, because I knew that it wasn't in Virginia. They had buried gold there, but it was meant for a purpose. And once you break the ciphers, you find out who they were working for. And you just realize, the whole context of the story of what they were doing. They were going out west, mining gold, bringing it back to Virginia, and then somebody was picking it up in Virginia and depositing it in their bank. And they were trying to generate a lot of money secretly without anybody being able to figure out. It was like, kind of a tax evasion racket. But it was done by J.P. Morgan himself. And that's what you end up on. Yep.
Can you type in the private chat a few letters of the email address? Because
yeah.
So while you're doing that, I'll ask a question.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the location of the mine was secret, right?
Right. They didn't want people to know where it was because they were trying to. They were trying to pass the information on to their boss, saying, "Hey, this is the operation we were on. This is where, this is confirmation where the location is, and we had to bail out." This is what they're trying to say. We had to bail out. We were under investigation, and they killed their 30 mining. The whole team that went out west, they killed them all off and disappeared. And
What do you
so
mean
the
when was that?
1880, like two, I think it was.
They, are you serious?
And
How many people?
the guy was under investigation for about 2 years in Arizona.
For how many people?
What?
Check it out.
Siri? Somehow I invoked Siri on my phone. Sorry. Siri started talking on my phone.
He's like, she wants.
Dang
She
it.
wants.
I did it again. Stop, Tony. Okay, I'm on the email, and this is better because now I can bring these pictures up easier.
Yeah, those are in those are in a sequence, and we can walk right through how it's broken down. And
thing is, I can download this whole thing, and then I can bring it up in the image viewer too. Cool. So that's good. That
was the key to everything, is that when you get out to where the mines are at, where it says in the cipher, Maricopa, Arizona, by a dam. There's only one dam that's out there at the time period that they had made, and so you can literally go right there to the base of the dam, and you discover in the history of all of the gold mining and everything out here from the 1840s, about 40 years earlier, that there were a ton of gold mines that were found and maps that were made of them. But everybody had kind of lost, over a period of time, just lost context of where they are. So it was kind of like, in the pamphlet, it told you they went north from Santa Fe into Colorado to find these gold mines. But they gave you a measurement and a direction. They sent you in the wrong direction. If you use the measurements and the angle of inclination from Albuquerque, it basically tells you exactly where to go to. And you even showed one of the pictures of the mines that is located using those coordinates and everything. It's really amazing how it's put together, because my website shows a little bit, the Facebook page shows a little bit more in depth of everything that's involved with it, which includes the old maps that were found. But here's the odd thing. There were old maps that were found, but then there were also maps that were found from like the 1930s. And these are stone maps. And the stone maps were found right near where the bodies were found. So they figured, this has got to be, somehow these guys had some maps with them, and that they were leaving the maps behind as some sort of treasure quest sort of thing. Like, hey, we didn't make it out of the valley. We got killed by the natives. Here's some mystery, code that's at the bottom of the maps, and you can kind of figure it out. But it wasn't in the location where the gold mines are. It was on the trail out of the valley on their way back to Virginia. So this whole thing is like a story dressed up, but at every point you find like a cipher or a mystery that's added onto it to cause more confusion. And you're just like, why would somebody go through all that trouble if all they were trying to say is, hey, we're mining out west, we may have trouble with the Native Americans. If you have trouble, or if we don't return and we get into trouble, open this box and, we'll basically put all that information, together for a search team to go out and look for us, that sort of thing. They went through a lot of trouble, is what I'm saying, in a really complex way of trying to encrypt things. And it just made it look like it was a military operation of some kind that had more to the story than they were willing to tell you. And when you find out that the men were dead and that this other strange set of mapstones shows up in the 30s, you just start looking at all this and you're like, this is all the same legend that's surrounding the Lost Dutchman gold mine. And this is around the same exact time. 1885 was when Jacob Wallace was in Arizona. And, this guy's got, the location to millions of pounds of high grade ore, apparently. And he's killed off a bunch of people that are trying to follow him. But then all of a sudden on his deathbed, he gives out cryptic clues. And it's just kind of, there we go, right there.
Finally.
Yeah. So inside the story, you can read it. It says, before giving the papers to the public, I would say a word to those who may take an interest in them and give them a little advice acquired by bitter experience. So if you're looking at the context of all of this, you notice that the capitalized letters that are here spell bison, Biisin, or bison
Mhm.
too. And their entire storyline was, we are on a hunting party going out west hunting bison. And so in the story, it tells you about that. But then you get to this one paragraph, and the only capitalized letters are bison. And it's got like a number 2 added to it. And you're like, oh, this is like a second part of a key. So this whole entire.
Well, let me give me again. This is for people who don't know. They're trying to understand this. This paper right here was part of a group of a, a group of other papers. This thing we're looking at exactly, or did you cut this part out of?
Oh, this is part of the pamphlet. This is this is the story in the pamphlet that the
This
man
is
is
just this is just part of it, or is this the whole thing that
no,
was?
it's part of it. It's like one paragraph,
Okay, so when you're approaching this, and do you know that there's hidden message in the paper, or are you just since you're a code breaker, you're looking for it?
Right. You're looking for what is known as some kind of pattern to recognize. Now you see
But I
where
mean, how did you know to look in this text?
oh
You had to have some kind
that
of hint,
paragraph.
right? You just didn't go
Right.
through,
Oh, no, I'm pretty good at identifying patterns. Like you see where the blue, you've got 2 segments that say advice, and then to devote, right? And then and devote to, that sort of thing. So you're looking at a series of patterned boxes. Well, a pattern series of words that repeat over and over. The way that you write a storyline is you try to never repeat yourself.
Right.
If there, because by doing so, you create kind of like a strange kind of, I guess you can say, reoccurring kind of theme. It's like you're overemphasizing something, right? So in the literary context, that stands out as being inappropriate for the type of composition or the grammatical use of the words. That stands out.
And who
And
wrote
then,
this?
well, it was discovered that it was actually J.B. Ward. He published it, but he had mentioned that there were parts of it that were from the man Thomas Jefferson Beale that left the box behind.
How much more of that was out of this paper is there besides this paragraph here?
Oh, there's like 5 or 6 of those.
Oh, there are?
Oh yeah, and if you go to the other ones, if you see right here where it says, before Revis Court give the papers to the public, I would acquire a little legitimate business. A loan is more easily found. That's the advice that he's trying to tell you, that before his court trial, because this guy is being investigated for a fraudulent land grab and a claim that he made out west. This guy Revis, he tried to claim the entire valley of Phoenix, like all the way into New Mexico. He said that he had inherited through some agreement that he made an actual tract of land that was attributed to a codex that was on like in an official kind of document. So he tried to rip off. He basically researched into some old tracts of land that existed, knew that there were gold mines there, said, how am I going to figure out a way to get these under my ownership? And also he was trying to grab other land that was there because they were bringing the railroad through, and he wanted to sell the land to the railroad. He was trying to.
Where did you get Revis?
That's it. These are in the first series of blocks that are here.
So it's not in this. It's not in this immediate text.
Everything that was written is blocked in. So like you see right here, like the second set of blocks next to the first word before, up at the top left, and it says give spared to the left of your mouse.
Right here, give.
Yeah, and then spared. there's Revis right there, blocked in red. You can see the words are attached to both the letters that are above it and below it. That's called an Old English block cipher. And an Old English block cipher is made so they select. So they
How in the world would you?
No,
How
no.
in the-
That's
those two little blocks are supposed to be Revis.
REAVIS, well, and the S is the red S in should. So what they're trying, yeah, they're trying to hint at, hey, you should spare Revis from any kind of grievance, from your legitimate business. See, it's the words give, spare, should, and then from your legitimate business over to the right. So if you're looking at just those words, they stand out as being something that is embedded that possibly, okay, you're looking at one possible breakdown, right? So when you find that exact patterning and it holds what's called a consistent pattern of context of a description, that sort of moves in through the context of the cipher itself and creates the underlying storyline that is there. Now you see where the word is key. You see that, that's a very obvious pattern that sticks out. So you've got advice, to devote, to devote, to devote. That's the advice that he's trying to tell you. Devote your time to 3 different ciphers.
But
And
wouldn't this whole thing depend on? Is this exactly how the paragraph was laid out? I mean, what if in another font
right,
or another spacing,
right,
give was over here and
right,
spare
right.
was down here or over here somewhere?
They copied it over pretty well. You're right that it does hold a different kind of spacing to a degree, but it's not that far off. And they did pretty much a good job in training.
I don't know. I was asking if it did. I didn't
Yeah.
realize. I was guessing, but
You're right though.
Yeah.
Any misalignment can throw off the actual read of the box ciphers. But here's the thing. This is how they're actually trying to leave it under a plausible state of deniability. So it's so easily denied as being a cipher. One, from outside observations of other people seeing your research, or two, that you would not basically latch on to something like this because you wouldn't know that it even existed. So that's the art of this is called the art of concealment.
So this was the part of this was what was in the Popular Mechanics. Was this the same story that was in Popular Mechanics?
Yep, this is the story about the Beal. If you go to the next one,
let me ask you one quick question.
Yeah.
What exactly was this trying to say in plain English?
Before Revis goes to court and they give the papers to the public, he wants you to publish it to create the mystery behind it, but he wants you to acquire a legitimate business. And that alone is more easily found is the context. He's talking about working on trying to create a legitimate business that would be in Phoenix, that would be able to harness from the mines. He got caught and he's going to court. So he's saying, give the papers. And one of the guys from the general public, quote unquote, who's not known to their organization, would then go establish a business as a cover front. So they
who was he expecting to? Who was this cipher or code for? Who was he expecting to read it?
J.P. Morgan.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh yeah. It's legitimate.
So he would have people working for him that could do what you do, probably, right?
Oh yeah. Well, they were all. This is an old system. This dates back to like the 1600s of Francis Bacon, or maybe like the 1550s. It's a creative way of hiding a few things inside of a cipher, and that's intended to kind of create like a, I guess you can say like an underlying theme. Leave this one right here. This is a good one. So it says, early in the excursion to trace them, you march for days. Revis had sent art maps, and days went past New Mexico, early in the excursion to trace them, march for days and days, which means it's a long journey. And then when passed, and then it says it gave a plainer explanation, which meant there was some sort of direction that was included, or some sort of measurement that could be drawn on a map using an elevation, like a horizontal line plus an angle of explanation, which would be found in a short Edgar Allan Poe poem, which is the Gold Bug. And they mined ore out west. They sent Rebus out west. And then it says, when you're past New Mexico and Texas, exceed into Inde territory, mining the country around us. Inde is the word, the native word for the Apache. It's spelled NDE, just like that, with an accent over it. So Inde country is like, oh, that's Apache territory. That's the Superstition Mountains.
Where's the Inde? Where is that?
Let's see. Inde. It's right up, second line in the middle, under the word vary, the and. See, to vary means to alter something. To vary see,
it's somewhere close to it.
Go up above.
Oh, right here. Oh, the top line. To vary.
Yeah, to vary the monotony, and drop down underneath it, and there's the Inde. You just touched it. It's in there. It is. And
and A and D E. Okay, or NDE is what you said. Yeah. Okay. I got you.
NGE is the spelling for Apache, and that context of description is actually mentioned in the same blocking system that's inside of the cover. So you find that they were writing this sort of theme, like they put some of the information on the cover, and then inside of it they made a storyline, and the storyline has a few hints in the context of the read. And then when you go back and find things, it mentions, do not let any false or idle punctilio interfere with your collection of the shares. And so there's misappropriated or misused grammar, and then punctuation isn't used the right way in certain locations, and those things are supposed to stand out to you as being like.
Do you have images of the pamphlet itself?
Yeah, I included that in the email there. You should be able to find one of those that's inside of it. Those are just more block ciphers, more block ciphers. I mean, there's a lot of it in there, and go to the first attachment. The first attachment has all that.
Is that some kind of map?
Those are the original maps that were found from the 1840s. They're on record in Arizona. So, they didn't give you the maps. They were supposed to show you, hey, let's go out west and find these maps. They're like, hint, hint, use these maps. Hint, hint, use these maps. Start here.
I didn't mean to jump around so much. I thought I was just curious what how, it's funny because it seems like the way this is laid out here would have to be similar to the way it's laid out in the pamphlet, unless you know what I mean?
It literally says in no order whatsoever. As one of the underlying themes, it says they kind of confuse things a little bit. They were really good at what they did, but they use like keywords, and the keywords that are mentioned, they develop a theme, and the theme is based on a Persher encoding system, which is based on your interpretation of things, hiding things that will confuse people, knowing what their interpretation would be. So the storyline would carry you through. You would basically just be following the narrative or whatever the guy said and be like, oh, this is the way it works? Okay. But then you realize it's a code, and in order to deceive somebody, they're trying to hide millions in gold and silver. And they're like, and the location of their mines. So they're going to do whatever they possibly can of leaving that behind for only the person that knows what to look for, and then deceiving everybody else. You see what I mean? Still there? Tony, you still there? think I lost you on sound.
Well, that's silly. I muted myself to cough, and I didn't turn. I thought I lost you again.
I know. I was like,
Oh,
no.
no, not again. But
Right?
yeah. What I was curious about was, no, I thought this was interesting, the way this geography is in the shape of a horse head.
I know, right? And the map just fits perfectly of its design. Even shows the perfect curvatures of the river too. You know.
So when did you first hear about this?
2014.
And were you saying there was some challenge to figure this out, or what? Well, how did you get involved with this particular?
Well, it's been going for a long time. Like the Lost Dutchman gold mine and the Peralta mines, which are all different legends in Arizona, and the Beale. All of this stuff is on one website, right? So I'm just looking for cool things to do because I'm bored. It's 2014. I hadn't even started doing. This is the funny part. I hadn't even done like any code breaking work at all. I was just like a caving guide, a climbing guide, like a mountaineer, like an explorer, like an outdoorsman, right? And I knew how to read a map really well, and I knew how to, use Google Earth and the satellites. So I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll look around for it because I read a story about Jacob Waltz, the Lost Dutchman. And when I read the story, I was like, it gives I was surprised. I was like, it gives every single kind of point of reference where Jacob Waltz was, so you could kind of follow the way that he moved through the valley. And I just kind of hypothetically was like, oh, he must have stayed by the river, followed the military road because it was the safest, most well-developed road then. And he basically just went to this one location. And I knew they'd put up a dam there and started flooding the rest of the canyon behind it, which you can see there. And I was like, okay, well, he obviously just, went to one of these canyons along the way. And I was just able to figure out which one it was. And then I was like, I found some landmarks on the Google Earth satellite. And this took me 35 minutes to find. 35 minutes.
But it had been lost before that?
It had been 140 something years people were looking for this gold mine. And, it's not just one gold mine, it's a series of gold mines, but one of them is supposedly so rich that Jacob Waltz he made his own mystery on his deathbed, and he told it to a bunch of people and showed them that he had gold and started the Arizona gold rush up pretty much with it.
So these maps, who has possession of these maps now? Are these?
Those are those are in the History Museum of the Superstition Mountains, the mining museum. They have one. It's over at the Goldfield Ghost Town, and it's right
what
near.
City is that near?
It's called Apache Junction. It's right outside Phoenix. It's like like maybe like 10 miles outside of Phoenix.
That's fascinating. What does that say?
It says, Esta vereda es muy peligrosa. Now, you notice how every one of the words is capitalized, right?
Right.
But look at the word peligrosa.
It's small caps.
Right. Well, it's got one. The first letter is capitalized, and the rest are lowercase caps. So
right.
that word stands out from the rest, right? And that word,
well, they just didn't have enough room.
that word means perilous, right? Peligrosa, right? And so you go look into Beal Ciphers, and they go, we're engaged in a perilous enterprise. Is what their statement
when you
was.
Say, look, you just said, this is what confuses me. Okay, I'm trying to understand your thing. You said go look in the Beal Ciphers. Are you looking
in the pamphlet?
In the pamphlet, which has this text.
Right. It says we are engaged in a perilous enterprise.
So you don't even, to do what you did here, you don't even need what I thought was a cipher, which I thought these were ciphers.
Well, you do need the cipher, to be honest with you, because the ciphers tell you a little bit more detail of how to get there and how to go through the trail and then how to get to the gold mine itself.
But who created this? Somebody created this, or did you create this?
No, that somebody created that. That was the person that created the pamphlet, the story, and the ciphers was James Revis. And then afterwards, he sent the message to J.B. Ward, who then printed the cover story and added the details that we saw, the little blocks in the storyline. So J.B. Ward accentuated it with his this flair. He added this flair here to try and basically, he's talking about Revis before Revis's court trial. Give the papers to the public, and I would acquire a little legitimate business. A loan is more easily found, et cetera, et cetera. They're trying to say, okay, Revis is going to court. We want to keep the mines to ourselves. Let's go set somebody up in business so they can take over and run the mining operations after they killed their 30 men. It's like, holy Jesus.
So it was these men were actually found. That's documented. That's not just some kind of story of like a.
Oh yeah, the men. This is the funny part. The men were found at a place in a shallow grave, and they were like less than 2 feet under the dirt, and like things were sticking out at that point because the wind had blown a little bit of the. And so they found some bones, right? And they were like, "Holy Jesus! It's a mass grave of 30 men." And then they found out of the 30, they found 2 more that had run off into the canyon like they were trying to escape. So they were like, they couldn't believe what was going on. And they saw a bunch of gold nuggets around them. And like they had, leather packs and parchments and stuff. It was just kind of a well-known historical location. So they created like a landmark out of it. And they call it Massacre Grounds in Arizona. It's a well-known location.
And who killed the guys again?
The KKK.
Why did they kill them?
The KKK was the civil order of the KGC, which are the Knights of the Golden Circle. The Knights of the Golden Circle were the big up affluent business guys that were running town. So whoever was running town was a part of this organization that were Confederates. They would join on a secret order after the Civil War called the Knights of the Golden Circle. And then they would employ KKK members. They were like their employees. So they had guys stationed, and everywhere that they were stationed, the KKK was in operation too.
In Arizona? That seems strange to me.
Well, look at this. They sent men out to Arizona from Virginia, and the place they came from was called Bedford, Virginia. And the founder of the KKK.
Bedford.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, all the stories are coming together now. Now we kind of realize who's doing what, and they're tied to J.P. Morgan, which is like, this huge business banking mogul in New York City at this point.
So what happened? All the gold was taken to Virginia?
Yeah, in 2 shipments. They made 2 shipments back because they mined through the seasons, but it gets way too hot here to mine, so they just kind of pack it up and they come back. They made their deposit. Then when the season changed, they went back. And they did this 3 times, and they only got 2 deposits made. And on their 3rd trip out, they were killed on the trail on the way out back west or back east. And so that's pretty much how
the gold. What happened to the gold they had that the guys got killed?
That's the mystery that is talked about in the Beale when they say that if you break the ciphers, there's 3 of these ciphers. One shows you where the vault of gold is, the gold mines. The next one shows you where they buried it in Virginia. And then the one after, but check this out, is if you zoom in on the left there.
Let me see if I can get.
It's pretty high density. Yeah, get in a little close.
Well, I can't move it around. Okay, yeah, I can. Okay.
Okay, yeah. So here you have, basically the same Old English block cipher encryption systems. So you're looking at, like, on the right-hand side, there's a little square, and it says two full, right? So It's right here. You're in
Right here.
no. See
Right here.
there's to the on the main page.
Oh, right there.
Yeah, twofold. So it's like a twofold cipher, right? You got two layers to it. One is a block, and this is the first one that you read about. So this is the one he's saying, "Oh, I broke this one with the Declaration of Independence." But as you can see, it doesn't break with the Declaration of Independence. It has a series of repeating numbers that are found in it. And so I'll run you through those real quick. If you scroll up a little bit, you see the word with the black line going through it, says foregoing attached to it.
Right here.
So you got,
it's almost green almost.
yeah. But if you zoom down more, and then there's foregoing again at the end of the line there. See?
Mm-hmm.
So you're connecting that first line. You're saying, oh, there's the pattern. Boom, you draw the line through. And then at that point, you start realizing inside, if you scroll back up, it'll show you which letters to choose. Scroll back up. And then inside of it, it says, okay, oh yeah, you can't really see it because that.
I wish this thing would quit doing that.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
well,
there we go.
See what? So you got these numbers that are all there, right? 3 and 41, right?
Right.
And it's like, why do you have all these page numbers on it? And then over here, it's got the number 20 on that page number. It's like all of this crap is out of place. It's misaligned. 3 and 41 make 44, obviously. So then you go find all the numbers 44 because you're doing the words foregoing. We're going for the number 4, right? Yeah, it's pretty self-evident. And then it goes into other stuff like, it just talks about it. It's a twofold or do use cipher. The letter is fuel, set the two-told trowel pledge, hell follows, that sort of thing. It's kind of like this one is designed of their Declaration of Independence as a secessionist, as a
this line denotes the page that was in the pamphlet.
It's that's like the outline of the print,
yeah,
right?
Okay,
yeah.
This is one of the pages of the.
Yeah,
I'm having a hard time following what's actually in the pamphlet and what's like being created.
Oh no! Those other numbers that were added, that was in the pamphlet too in this section, and it just shows up out of nowhere, like somebody was cutting and pasting something together, and it's like, this is ridiculous, Like I checked where there's only a few original copies left, so I verified all this stuff. I make sure I'm not dealing with just like cut and pasted stuff I pull off the internet. I promise that would make me look like a complete idiot. But check this right here.
No, I wasn't insinuating that. I'm just I'm trying to do is I'm trying to understand I'm trying to keep up with what's actually the papers and what's not the papers.
Right.
Like over here, this thing, is this part of the paper right here, or is it?
That's the code. That's the code that's pulled out of the cipher. So you've got like the number code.
I know, but again, terminology. Was this actually in the papers, or was it created out of the papers?
No, it was in the papers. All those numbers, all the numerical ciphers. That's all they gave you. They gave you the numerical ciphers and were like, hey, I broke one of the ciphers with the Declaration of Independence and I can't figure out the rest. So I decided to publish it and see if somebody else could figure it out. That's the basic kind of like storyline.
Is that part of what you published in the Popular Mechanics?
Oh yeah, everything is kind of discussed as like an overview, kind of like I went in depth with Dave Howard, but what he published was kind of like his story that he created for the magazine. So it mentions how I break the code using a key and how the alphabets are made to translate the numbers into the letters and how they concealed Old English box ciphers in the text of the letter. So
what is the meat? Oh, go ahead. I was going to ask you what the meat of what you broke.
Right.
When you say you broke it.
Well, here you're looking at them drawing a map, and the way that I've highlighted the map is using the only patterns that are in it, the only numerical patterns, the ones that are even mentioned. And so by drawing this out, you find a center line and an array. And where every single one of these little numbers is at with a box, 44, and 807. Those are two calibers of rifle. 807 repeating series repeating rifles. That's like, the rifle with the little handle underneath that you can load like 18, and then 44 caliber pistols. These are deposits of weapons. They have parked. They made a deposit of weapons on the right. If you kind of scroll back up to the right, scroll right here. Stop right there. See where the word pledge is?
Pledge right
Here in the in the middle. See where it appears in the block, right? See where it appears in the block right there? Yeah, in that block section, the word pledge is at the top,
right here.
Right? Yeah, so there's their pledge, there's their oath. It says the letter is fuel, set the two trowel pledge, hell follows. So it's kind of like, and these guys are pissed, and they're bearing weapons, and they're using a Declaration of Independence to kind of form the context of their cipher. So they're trying to say that they're going to separate from the Union and start up a second civil war. This is all about the Confederate depositories that Jesse James was a part of as well.
How would you know that? How would you take? You've got the Declaration of Independence in your hand.
Yep.
Right. How does it? How do you link it to this? Where's the link to this?
The Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence produces a story, not a story, but it translates these numbers here, right? And it gives you the answer to the cipher. So he says, but there's a ton of misspellings in it. Like I didn't include that in my research because that's what's called a null. And all it does is just basically describes a general area in Virginia 4 miles north. It says, I have deposited in a vault, or it mentions some other kind of container in iron pots, this amount of gold and this amount of silver. And it's like 4 miles north of Bedford, near Buford's Tavern as a landmark, as a checkpoint. It really doesn't go into like any kind of real context of like, okay, go 7 miles this way at this degree of angles, turn this way right, or it doesn't give you any like legit directions. It just basically says, hey, this is the map to when you break the cipher, this cipher breaks like this, and it shows you this is the information, but it doesn't really give you any information, So
how did you get hooked up with Popular Mechanics?
To be honest, they called me out of the blue.
Why were they interested? Because it's kind of funny because this story doesn't seem like a Popular Mechanics story. Maybe I guess it is.
I know what you're saying. The only mechanical side of it would be the structure and the mechanics that's involved in code breaking itself. So they've been doing they have like a side issue kind of thing inside their magazine. And then, like they've done cryptos, they've done like a few other like mystery ciphers. And they also throw in like an interesting kind of treasure hunting theme to some of the other ones that they've been working on in their cipher.
Yeah, I can see that. I just wonder if there was this the only story or the only thing you were working on at the time, or did you have other options as far? Or you said they contacted you though about this particular story.
Yeah, they contacted me out of the blue because they did research and were like, "Oh shit, this guy's got meat. He's got." I'm the only guy that's produced anything that's got any kind of weight to it at this point.
So they just contacted you because of you, not about the story.
Well, they were trying to break the ciphers, and they were like, "Oh, we heard that somebody broke the ciphers," and so they basically turned around because they were reading up on, "Hey, what are we going to make our next article about?" And then they were like, okay, let's make it about the Beal Ciphers because they were doing other cipher treasure hunts. And then they were like, okay, they looked through all the different, links online, and they were like, okay, this guy's got information about it. And to be honest with you, there's a lot of other people that have tried to work on this, and they kind of singled me out and were like, hey, we want to do an interview with you about your research in the Beal. And I was like, cool, I've been waiting, to do a high profile article about it. And it was really cool to talk with them and to see how they were working and integrating these types of, mysteries and puzzles into their magazine, because it makes for a better, more interesting lure. They're trying to bring more attention to their magazine by, attracting an audience and showing that people are utilizing their skills, their function, their ability, their skill sets to try and be able to break something down, Yep.
When you say you broke the cipher, what's the main gist of, like, what is the most fascinating, or what is the meat of what you broke in this particular case? The location of the mine, or the people, or the whole story as a whole, or what is it that you broke? Because when I read it seems like it seems like there's code even in the in what you broke. You still have to go in and decipher what is actually said. It's almost like the way it's written or the way it's deciphered. There's still a mystery there involved.
Yeah, they did a lot to try and cover it up, but as you can see, the patterns of the numbers are all there inside of the cipher. So you would say, okay, well, I just got to keep digging deeper. That's what it means. You got to dig deeper. You dig a little bit, maybe you break something of it. You don't get the whole story, And with me, I had found the gold mines in 2014, and then I moved out to go verify the gold mines existed. Then I was like, well, man, I'm going to have to break the cipher to prove what I was doing, And then so I sat down and I looked at the numbers, and I was like, all these numbers, they climb to 2906, and that's a pretty high number. And the Declaration of Independence only goes up to like 13 something or other in number count or in word count. So I was like, well, it's got to be something other than the Declaration of Independence. And so I just looked at the way that ciphers are created, and I knew that if you just stack a bunch of alphabets together and just label them 1 through 26, and then 27 through 53, and then on and on and on until you get to 2906, you'll produce 111 alphabets. And then I just knew to go ahead and test that out, I needed to write out 111 alphabets, and I didn't want to do that on paper. So I went on ChatGPT and I was like, hey, mule me 111 alphabets, counting to 2906, and just kind of repeat the number. And I put a few limitations and a few directional influences into the description of what I was trying to do. Limit it from doing this, but force ChatGPT to go through it. I think it made one mistake, and then I recorrected it, and then it just produced an entire alphabet the way I needed it. I was like, whoa, it's actually doing what I wanted it to do. And then I took it and translated the numbers and the letters, and I was like, oh, this is legend,
Who made this thing, this little map?
Well, okay, so like no one knows who made it, but if you look on the right, it's kind of got a signature on it. It says Yo Pasto al Norte del Rio, right? And that's obviously not Spanish, Yo Pasto.
Yo pasta. It's not,
right.
It's your pasta.
Right.
It's my pasta.
Right, but it's
look here. It says, what's this PED right here?
PEDRO. It's kind of faded. What you're looking at, these are the clay replications of the original stones. The original stones were given to the museum, but they were given to make a copy of them.
But where was this? Was this found in the cave, in the mine, or somewhere
else?
No,
those were found by the dead bodies.
Huh.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, what the hell is this? So you're looking at this word, yo pasto. That's kind of like bastardized Spanish, but it's kind of Italian at the same time. And then over here, you got the word yo, which is like an attention grabber, like, hey, yo, that's
maybe it's not a Y, maybe it's RO or RU.
No,
what could it be? A Y?
So yeah. What you're looking at is just read down the left side. Why? No, you had it.
Oh.
Yeah. So you're looking at the letters and see how they're indexed over on, like, they're just kind of indexed over on each line where they start. So it creates a slant. You see how the slant is there?
Yeah,
And
I
you
guess
know what?
because of the horse's butt and tail.
Yeah, that's definitely where all the horse shit comes from. So if you're looking at the if you're looking at the slant, a slant is like a comedic kind of twist, right? That sort of thing. If you know the word slant in its context. But if you go YADELRIO, right? That's Yardley. That's Osborne Yardley.
What's this E3 right here?
Those are locations of mines
Huh.
in accordance. So, like, if you were over on this map or whatever,
Are
that
these
sort
little
of thing.
trails? Are these supposed to be little
Yeah.
trails or a river
Well,
or
this
something?
is
Oh, it
the
says
lower
Rio.
one, right? The lower one is the start point, and the other one is an upper point of reference that you get to. So you you start at one point, you go up through the trail. This is a generic overview of the map where the starting
But
point is.
Is it Rio River?
Yeah.
Hmm.
But the
And these
river
little
is actually,
circles.
those circles are symbols of mines, or it's a Spanish arrastra, and surrounding the arrastra are where their mines are at. So they'll go up to a mine, they'll mine inside, then they'll bring it out to a rock ring, and the horse goes around and around and around on the ring, and he drags like other big rocks with him behind him, and they kind of crush and pulverize the ore down to. It's a really old way of doing things. Like, I don't know why they did that, because that's the old Spanish way. And on the map it says Yo Pasto, and it's like no one from even Mexico.
That's Italian, man.
Yeah, and well, you're really close to the reality of it. There were a bunch of guys. There were a bunch of guys that came into the valley in 1930, and what happened in the 1930, maybe 1932, is they were looking for the Lost Dutchman, right? And so when they came in, they were looking for the Lost Dutchman, but they were a part of this group and organization that was from the past under a different direction, but they were part of the same group and organization. And so what they were trying to do is they were trying to leave parts of the mystery behind. And it's proven that these stones came from the 1930s, because these are made with modern tooling. Like, when you go look at the originals, they're made with modern tooling. So they actually made like a copy of it. They pressed a copy in a mold and then poured clay into them to make a copy of each one of them. So that way they could have them in the museum. And they were like, well, it's so detailed and everything, we can get a perfect copy out of it. This must be from another time.
But these are relief. That's a relief, or is it raised?
It's cut into it.
Oh, I thought you meant they laid clay over the stone and to make a copy of it. Oh, that would be backwards though, wouldn't it? It'd be a mirrored.
Well, they make the mold. They make the mold first, and then they print after that. That sort of thing. Yeah.
This is that some kind of witch? What is that? Or a priest?
That's the what they call the witch priest stone. Now, if you kind of scroll up a little bit onto that picture,
crazy thing. That's as far as I can get it up.
No, I mean, like, just kind of like drag the photo up so that way.
That's as far as it'll go up. See?
Oh, well, then zoom out.
That's the bottom of the image right there.
Yeah, you should be able to open the whole thing up if you can show the rock area up to the top.
Oh, you're talking about this area.
Yeah.
I thought you were trying to get me to scroll down, go down.
No, sorry. Yeah. There's that's the carved area that image represents. So you got the triangular little hat right there. You got the cross that goes over that he's holding from the triangle, and there's a heart. This is
supposed to be a carving?
That's cut out of the rock. You go up to it, you see all the chip marks on the face, underneath the triangle. That whole entire face has been chipped off, and it's really obvious. It's really
it's not that obvious.
Hey man, when you're on the trail, it sticks out big time, because you look over to the left and you're like, what the hell? That's the witch pre-stone, you're like, what the hell, and it even mentions that as being like a part of the original mystery. So like this was all made by the Spanish, right? So over on the right, follow that line from the hat and it goes to the right and it points at a heart shape. I didn't really get a good picture of the heart shape because the heart shape, that area has more of the map located to it.
You took this photograph?
Yeah, that's me on the trail. Happy trails to you. I do all the boots on the ground research too, man. I actually go out to these locations, film videos, and that's right.
Is that an opening?
Yeah, that's the Lost Dutchman gold mine right there.
No, you're kidding.
It's said that the opening is no bigger than a barrel. And you got to squeeze inside, but then it opens up big time in there. And there's a vein of gold that's like 18 inches. It's a quartz vein that's just infused with gold. It's like 18 inches wide and just goes on forever. They describe it as.
Nobody mind it.
Well, I mean, it's got a, obviously it's kind of sacred to the Apache because it was once their mine, and it's on a somewhat historical trail that's preserved. So it's like you can't really declare it your
set up camp.
Well, you can camp as long as you want. You can't create any permanent in this area, no permanent like you couldn't set up an operation. Now to get to this place, you got to really hike up into the canyon. This is at the top, the very top of the canyon. When you start at the bottom, the walls are like maybe 200 feet tall on either side, And so by here, it's, that opening is the size of a barrel. You can see the scale.
The scale of this is not, it looks bigger than that, yeah.
Yeah, we're in a very small.
A human would be about this tall.
Yep. And you can kind of see to the left, there's a man standing carved into the rock. And if you zoom in a little bit more, you can see the initials that are on the rock there.
Where? Right here?
No, to your right.
You've got a vivid imagination. That's all.
No, it's actually there. You can see the man. It's like he's holding a cross or a rod of some kind. You got your mouse on his body right now. Or no, to the right. That's my mouse. Sorry. On the right, a little bit, just a little bit more. There. You're right in the middle of him. Now look up and you can see like a bearded head right there. And then to the right, he's holding kind of like, he's wearing robes, you see? And he's kind of like holding like a cross in his hand.
Is that his hand right there?
Yeah, that's pretty much where his hand leads to. If you look to the right, there's a more obvious space on the right side of the cave opening. And it's just like a head that's popped up and it looks like he's got a hat on. Go to the right there. And if you just look at that outline, you see the white vertical parts, his nose, you got like an ear on the side right there. And you can see his eyes to the left a little bit.
That thing?
No. There. That's his eye. There's his nose. You can kind of make out the image of his head and the silhouette there. You just kind of, look back a little bit, lean back a little bit from your computer. Take a little
squint.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, I mean, you're looking at basically somebody's design that they chipped into the rock. They're not getting everything as perfect out of it as they want, but they did highlight it pretty well. And they even put initials and carvings and other things. If you go to some of the other photos, it'll show you more of the ornate carvings that are involved in the whole trail too, which is really cool because they're all the way up the trail. You find it. No, that's just the Heartstone. That's showing you how to get back to Virginia. And if you're looking from
this thing or the
that right there, the symbol on the left is the gold mine. The hole on the left is the gold mine, right where the yellow lines are. Go to the left. There's a hole.
Let me zoom in on this one.
Okay.
Huh?
It's a computer,
It won't let me zoom in on that one. See, it doesn't give me the option like these.
Well, I can still describe it because go back.
Okay.
Yeah. Now here on the left where the yellow lines convene, there's a hole, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a hole for a sighting rod to make a measurement. And then there's 2 dots on the other side that are distinguished holes that are in the stone. And you're looking at basically from one, it leads to these 2. And you're looking at a point of reference, and then 2 lines that go. Now check this out. The dates that they brought their loads back to Virginia, and the dates that they brought them back were November of 1819. So you go 11 degrees at 1,819 miles, and that takes you to Monetta, Virginia. And then if you go, the other date was December 1821. So if you go 1,821 miles at a 12-degree angle, that leads you right to the next picture. And you click that. And see where the grounds are terraformed right there into the shape of an omega? You got like a straight line and then a curvature right there surrounding the tree. Yeah, surrounding that. That's the omega. That means the end. It's like a symbol of the end of the journey. You see? And if you zoom in to, well, if you just look at this area right here, don't zoom in just yet. Look at the outline above the yellow line. Like, see where that road goes through vertically? Mm-hmm. And now kind of look at go up to the top in the middle of the picture. You see like kind of like a triangular kind of shape in the tree outline. Just go all the way to the top of the photo.
Okay.
And buck over to the right to that. Yeah, that tree line right there. And then the 2 little eyes inside of the man wearing the hood. And then you got his shoulders that come down here to the left a little bit. And then over to the right, you're looking at a hooded man in a Ku Klux Klan outfit.
Good Lord.
Do you see it?
I see what you're saying, but I don't.
Yeah. And he's
I wouldn't have seen it if you hadn't pointed it out.
Right. Because Bedford, who knows anything about Nathaniel Bedford, right? Anyways, so this guy's wearing a bag over his shoulder, and he's kind of got like a secret location somewhere in this vicinity, and you're supposed to take those rock maps that you had and walk from that omega to find where the planet location is. Now, if you zoom in, I'll take you exactly to where it is, which is really cool.
Which way?
Keep going. Zoom in like a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more.
Oh, that's it. That's all I got.
All right. Well, drag the photo down a little bit.
This way?
Yep, right there. Okay, stop right there. Okay, so if you're going up the 122, right, it breaks right at this road. And you just passed, if you stop here at the river, there's a mill, a big red mill that's sitting right there. It's a historical mill. It's the mill at Otter Creek on the Big Island Highway. And so follow the river down until it meets with this blackened kind of right there. And then literally right at the shores on the north side of it, there is a vault and a depository. There's a series of rocks and a flat slab that's stacked, or that's got rocks stacked on top, as described in the Beale. And then this area that's beneath it, which is this kind of like hilly area, you can kind of see a trail that walks through it that follows up the ridge, down the left a little bit, down to your left a little bit, then just kind of down. And then it curves around over the top of the ridge. Yep, follow that little, you can kind of see the blank area in the tree lines. Anyways, that's where they buried their shares. They had 30 miners that they brought some back for their boss, and they were entitled to a share for their employees' kind of share.
But so it's been dug up since then?
Well, nobody knows. That's the thing. And to be honest, I haven't been to Klan country in a while. You know what I mean? So,
oh, come on, the Klan doesn't really operate. I don't know why you're fixated on the Klan.
I'm not. I'm just saying that's who they were.
It's pretty much dead.
Well, I guess. But what I'm saying is the irony involved in all of it is that the guy who owns the property is like 90 something years old. So in reality, he still kind of holds his ethics of everything that he was a part of and his family was a part of back then, right? So his son is his caretaker of his property. I've already gotten all the info about who they are and stuff, and I'm just planning to kind of like talk to them and be like, hey, do you want to, try and solve this mystery? Because in Virginia, they're entitled to half of whatever you found. So I'm thinking they deposited the boss's share, and the boss came for his. But when they killed off their own men, I would think that out of respect to try and keep up the story behind all of it and try and make it just look like it was the natives, that they would have left the shares for the family guys behind. But they're all dead too. So all you have is a bunch of people who are a part of an operation, and nobody knows who they are. Like in the ciphers, it says they had the names and the residences encrypted in the third cipher of who the 30 men were. And I can't find any information in it at all about who they were. And so I'm like, okay, well, that means under law, it's called lost or abandoned property in Virginia. And the landowner is entitled to 50%. So now let's say that somebody was in on the gig originally and you showed up saying, oh, I found all the stuff that they're talking about, right? This guy, there's a good chance that he's just going to say, get off my property after he sees the evidence and goes and digs it up for himself. Because he's going to want hard evidence that it's there to let you on his property.
So it's kind of just go dig it up.
Right. That's what I'm saying. He'll be like, get off my property, because check this out. In that area, this legend is well known in that area. And it's only.
You don't think he knows, though?
No, because I think that he bought the property because he's 90. He'll be about 95 this year. So that puts him buying the property at like 1910 or like.
Somebody has just gone out there with a metal detector at night or something.
Well, I'm the only guy that knows about this stuff.
Huh, well, there's a lot of good people that know now.
Right? Well, not really. But because I don't really show everything that there is to it about where the shares are. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is that in that area, they have filmed like, I don't know how many documentaries. The History Channel has been there. Brad Meltzer's Decoded has been there. One of the other big treasure hunters has gone through the area. There were 16 film documentaries that were filmed in the area, but they didn't have a site to go to. So they go to a Christmas tree farm, which is about 2 miles or 3 miles to the west of this. And so they're like right in the general vicinity, like a stone's throw away, a country mile away. But nobody is really going to look for this one specific area because they have no idea what they're looking for. So they don't have the maps. They don't have the ciphers broken. One guy, now here's the thing. This is odd. One guy named, I think his name was Cole. He had said that he broke the cipher and published it. And then he showed a location where he went to look for a cave. And the cave is right over by Montvale, which is like the next town over from Buford's and Bedford. The Buford's Inn was the supposed inn where he left the box and everything in Bedford. So the next town over is Bedford. And this guy Cole found like a cave, and it has that witch with the cross on it, that witch stone. It has that clearly marked on it. So I'm like, oh man, he must have been onto something, right? Maybe it was one of the other depositories that they made, but when he dug it open, it was empty. Now there's another guy that went on, I forget what that treasure hunter's name is or whatever. Oh, this is a really cool part that you just pull up. If you zoom in a little bit, I can show you a little bit better detail. On those stones, those clay tablets, it says "Busca por el mapa, busca por el corazón." Look for the map. Yeah, no. It says on the clay tablets that were found in Arizona, it says "Busca el mapa, busca el corazón." It says, look for the map, look for the heart. So here you have the map. And this is a map of something found, that carving to the right. That's a picture of a carving that was found in Bedford Basin, Nova Scotia. And on the left-hand side, you see the map is generically kind of drawn to take on the image of Nova Scotia and the region in that vicinity. So I'm thinking these guys are all trying to hint at this being something related to the hidden treasure of Oak Island, because I know for a fact that that Mormon gospel and prophecy, that all started from that same thing. One of the founders of Mormonism had property on Oak Island. The Mormons, yeah. So they're all tied to the same manifest destiny sort of movement out west. They, triggered the gold rush. They wanted people to settle out there and go take the lands and act as fodder, for the big Indian wars. And then they moved in with their big time money machines and, tried to take control over all the towns and turn it into what was, they claimed, their promised land, And so looking at everything that went on, and you see the symbolism that's there, it's pretty cool.
What is this supposed to be, though? I mean,
that's supposed to be a carving that was found in Bedford Basin, Nova Scotia.
Is this supposed to be like the sun, or what is that supposed to be?
Well, it's a series of it's an exclamation point, and it's surrounding. It's kind of like a caution, or it's something to be warned about, something ahead of time. And the design of what you see there are a series of tunnels, underground channels, French drains that were found on Oak Island. They this is actually the map of Oak Island, and those are the drains that are used to drain the swamp.
What are these black dots? These
those are just points of reference of things that you find, landmarks or
what's the scale of this? Like how big is this whole thing?
That rock carving is maybe like 12 to 14 inches in diameter of length.
Okay, it looks like it's bigger than that. That's interesting.
Right? Yeah. You would think it had some detail, but it also relates to another symbol that's found on the same rock, which is part of the Abenaqua Confederacy, or no, the Mi'kmaq Confederacy. Yep, the Mi'kmaq tribe up there. The Mi'kmaq people, they were part of the original legend that was passed of a man who traveled on the back of a whale, they said, and traveled from a far off land wearing a white robe with a red cross on it, and talked about them being like Knights of Christ or Knight Templar kind of people that had traveled and visited their land a long time ago. They called the man Glooskap, like a loose fitting goose feathered cap. He had like a hat with a plume in it. And that was the guy that they'd met. His name was Samuel Champlain. He was the French.
It sounds French. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was the French captain, Samuel Champlain, who had voyaged there on the Order of the Helm. And they were basically bringing a treasure to the land of what they called Acadia, or Acadie. And they were trying to hide remnants of a religious figure, the remains of a religious figure, in a vault. And they put the vault in a side of a cliff in a mountain pass. I actually did the research, broke the codes, and tracked the mapping down all the way from France, all the way through Oak Island, all the way into New France in Vermont, where I live. And then in the mountains, along the waterfront and in the mountains, were a huge array of carvings, and they all pointed to the same location. And I documented the discovery of that vault. I even made a video of it.
So you live in Vermont now?
Oh, I live in Vermont. I'm a resident of Vermont, but I'm currently working in Arizona on the film documentary and the photo documentary, trying to pull some gold out from the mines.
What documentary?
What's that?
What documentary? What are you?
I'm writing a book. It's called Beal Ciphers, below or beneath the surface, and I'm basically trying to put together as many short films, or I'm trying to do a local historical documentary with the local film crew. But I've already secured the support of Blair Media, because they're going to work with me. They're a nationwide, film production company, and they do work for like Discovery Channel and, the big ups like that do all the Travel Channel kind of shows and everything like that. So they're trying to work with me and getting into Arizona to come and film these locations and to do a larger, more in-depth documentary series. It's going to be like a 5 or 6 part series we're making.
Are you going to try to attempt to, as part of that documentary, find this location where the
Well,
gold is, or?
it's not just that location. Remember, I showed you there was a circle of weapons that were buried. So
Huh.
I know how to
Yeah,
find
but
those.
that would
I know how to, yeah.
the gold's going
Because
to be worth more than the
well,
weapons.
I mean, the gold, you can get as much as you want out of the gold mines, but who's to say that any of the stuff in Virginia is still there? Like, obviously, their boss
Yeah.
was it was so greedy, and they killed their own men. Who's to say they even left anything behind? You know,
The
and
weapons are back in Arizona, though, right?
I can't tell you where those are at, or otherwise people will just start running around and start digging up the great. They'll even dig up Jesse
Well, I guess
James.
what I'm trying to say is they were probably more preserved if they're in a dry, arid
No,
environment.
they
They would
would
be
go.
preserved better than.
They would go to the extent of digging up Jesse James's grave looking for them. You know. So, no,
That's funny.
you know, there's a lot of information out there that people will tell you, oh, this is guaranteed, it's verifiable. I just want you to invest in my operation. I don't do that. You know, I go and research it. I produce a video. I make a website about it. I show it to people. I gain a general understanding that they're kind of old timers and they know about all the legends. So if you convince them, then you're pretty much a go that you know what you're doing, you know? But if you just try and go at it alone and you show up and you're at this guy's property and he's never heard of you or talked to you before and you're like, hey, can I come search your property? He'll probably just be like, no. And then he'll get suspicious and he'll be like, well, something's here. You never know. You might give up the story ahead of time. And so you got to kind of go into it with the understanding that, you know, you're probably never going to find anything in those kind of buried treasure hunts. And the best way to do it is to go and look into the source of where they got all their money and just go tap the gold mines. So I went and got a claim out in Arizona because that one trail I showed you is not the only trail they're involved with. They were involved with 2 or 3 other trails. And so I went and tapped all of those and I got a claim on one section that has a concentration of 4 mines put together. And that's what I'm working now. I
think those would all be mined out, wouldn't you?
No, well, because here's the thing. Once you find a vein, you're going in on a straight line. You find the vein on the wall, you just go to the left or the right, or the left or the right. So you make these little branches that branch off and you just kind of tap the vein however deep it is. They're all, and this is the thing. It's not just the veins of gold that you're tapping that are the highest concentration. The actual rock itself has such a high content of gold that's in it. You can just take the raw material out of the stone and break it down and crush it, and you can extract gold plates out of this stuff. Like in Arizona,
you have to do it chemically at that point, or
no, you get about 96% purity, and you just sell it at that point. And if somebody wants it for jewelry, that's one thing. You know, ornamental stuff, that's one thing. Or if they want to refine it, they send it to the refinery and you just sell it in bulk to a guy who refines it to 99, you know, currency, you know, value, 99.999% pure gold. And the thing is the gold in Arizona is crazy. Like, there's guys that go out into like a river and they just go up on the shores of the river and then they just dig a bunch of holes, right? Like maybe 4 feet down, 5 feet down, and they grab a bunch of rock. And you can't even like see hardly any gold in it at all, right? But then they go and they break it down and then mix it with borax and then just melt it. And then they pour that stuff and it comes out with like slag on top. And they break
what I was
slag.
talking about chemically. That's what I meant by
well, it's just the borax will extract all of the impurities. They'll burn off and turn to slag, but the gold will remain inside of it if you keep the temperature right. And you just pour that stuff out into a mold, and you're left with these little plates, you know, and they just stack up, man. They're like
also what I've seen people do too is you can, if it's dust or if it's, you know, a lot of rock and debris, you can what is it, hydrochloric acid, or you can break it down into a liquid, and then there's another chemical that'll separate it. And then,
Yeah, I'm trying to do things as old school as possible, so as not to really
because
get.
that's expensive. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the chemical can be dangerous because a lot of them use mercury to extract the
good
gold.
Lord. Yeah, you don't want to do that. Yeah.
The mercury extraction process works best. So the refinery that has all that equipment keeps it contained and it's safe. But what I do is I just burn it kind of like you're melting steel, like
Right.
it's just like a raw metal. But then you got slag on the top of it, and you just got to break that off. What's left are these little buttons in the bottom of your cauldron. But in my case, I don't get these little buttons. I get these flat plates, and the stuff is so highly concentrated out here in Arizona. It is crazy.
You know what you should do?
I've never seen it like that anywhere.
After you get some of that, you should process it, and we'll do a show, and you can show pictures.
Well, I
of
do.
it.
I do have some of the raw ore, and I used in my avatar on the show. I used a picture of some blocks that I had found that are basically along the trail, and you can see how gold rich they are, And
right here in your avatar.
Oh yeah, baby. That one on the left. The one on the left is about the size of your palm. And then it fits in your palm, like your entire palm.
The gold looking one there on the
left, yeah. And then the big one on the right is about the size of maybe it's a little bit bigger than like the platform of a laptop. Like the base is about as wide, maybe a little bit smaller than the width of a laptop, but the length is about 18 inches long.
So how many ounces of
that one rock on the right was ridiculous. It weighed like 40 pounds.
But I mean, out of that, how many ounces of gold could you get out of that?
Oh man, you could probably get close to a pound out of that one on the right.
A pound? Are you serious?
Yeah, dude. I told you that's metallic, man. That's like pure metallic kind of sheen. That's like solid metallic. You don't find that very often in that kind of concentration. That's one of the most primo kind of examples of how potent this gold is and why they were willing to kill their men over it. You see what I mean?
I was gonna say, I mean, yeah, a pound would get you whacked pretty quick.
Well, hey, when you've got more than tons of it to deal with, and all you got to do is go up there and pick it up anytime you want to, it's like a drive-through window for you, right? So I'm trying to find guys that are rock hounds, guys that are into exploration, guys that are into business opportunities, that want to develop their own small business, or guys that have they're like, hey, I want to pay off my mortgage. Let's go gold mining a little bit. Or guys that want to build a shop. They want, just guys, just yahoos like myself that want to go out west and do work. So I'm looking for other people that want to actually get into the business, but are really good people.
This guy that's in the chat right now, Richard. I know he's from UK. He comes over and visits from time to time. This sounds like something that would be up his alley.
I would take all these guys out. I've had requests from the other podcasts that I've done. I was like, sure, man, I'll take you up to show you the Lost Dutch. You can break some off if you want to. Put your initials in the wall. Say I was here. That sort of thing. And you know what I mean? It's a brand new discovery, and very few people have been exposed to it. So it's to the point where it has a lot of value to it. And I want to try and work the right. I don't want to charge people to do this thing. I want to make it like a reason why guys go out and adventure together and get out and hang out in the woods and go out and explore new places. Like my father is the first president of the Boy Scout Explorers, right? So like, it's in my blood. Yeah, he's the first elected president. He's from Tennessee. He came off the farm in Tennessee, went to Princeton, and he was already elected and nominated when he was 17. He even went to Japan and like other countries and talked with all the youth groups and started getting them moving. And I was nominated the vice president of the Earth Club, and I was a caving and climbing guide when I was like 16 and 17. So I would take my high school crew out of the Earth Club, and we all go hiking and climbing and caving in Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee. So, man, I miss all those areas. You know,
Yeah,
like
we
to me,
one of the funnest trips I took the
that's
scouts on. Well,
yeah.
when Alex was young, he was in the scouts, and I was an assistant scoutmaster. And one of the most fun trips we had was an orienteering class we took them on to the Tennessee National Guard site near Cohutta, and
Oh,
that was
cool.
awesome. That was an awesome trip.
Well, one of the cool parts about orienteering is you can actually bury something and say, okay, if you follow these and then if you found if you're able to have like some gold or like a cool coin that you had found in a treasure, you could like leave it for them in a treasure hunt. Like make them go through the actual process of getting all the coordinates right. And they would learn how to use landmarks or, distance of lines of sight to different objects. And, I mean, all the coolest stuff that you were ever taught, that you
the guard there had set up these, it was some of their training blinds in the woods. And these things were like 2 miles out. And the guys were, the scouts were really wore out that day because they train, these troops. I'm not sure if it's special forces, but I know that the reserve units train there, and
it's a mountain training corps. I think I remember it. We were up at Stone Door. You remember where Stone Door, Tennessee is, right?
Yeah, that's up northeast Tennessee, though. Yeah,
right. But up in that area, the Air National Guard will fly through the canyons, and they train up there as well. So we've had a lot of experience
this is down sort of on the Tennessee Georgia border where the swamp it's kind of swampy, and they even have cool training in the swamps and stuff down there.
Mosquito hunters.
Yeah, it was pretty rough terrain for scouts.
Yeah, I prefer the high mountains and the mountain regions. They have less bugs, like you get to those areas and you're not fighting with the black flies or you're not messing with any kind of the mosquitoes getting at you. And in Georgia, they were really bad. Like Tennessee and Alabama had the worst humidity out of all the states.
Oh yeah.
There was so much moisture and so many caves that were down in that area. Everything was just always sopping wet when we go caving. Tennessee and the plateau is a little bit better, a little bit nicer when you get up on the Cumberland Plateau. And down in Georgia, you got some of the mountain regions up by Dahlonega or Currahee Mountain or Lookout Mountain.
Over where the near Cohutta, no, not Cohutta, where the Appalachian Trail starts.
Oh, okay.
Northeast Georgia is where the trail starts over there. That's a nice area.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Well, we got about 10 more minutes. So how do we wrap up this story? It's very interesting.
Well, there's extra.
Let me ask you this before we get too far. What? Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
What I was trying to say was that really bonus perk about all this stuff is there are a bunch of unknown guys that were running this, but you discover more about who they were and the names of the guys: James Revis, Jacob Waltz, Albert Pike, J.P. Morgan. It even mentions Rockefeller being involved, but that they were going to double cross Rockefeller and the whole thing. And they actually show where they're double crossing him in those templates that I showed you. But it also leads to 2 locations in Arizona of 2 depositories that are mentioned, and there are maps to them from the Jesse James archives and collections. And I found both of those locations, and both of them were dug up and completely emptied. And the only thing we found was a broken clay jar that had a bunch of Indian. But we used a map to dig a hole, and we found this clay jar that was broken. So somebody had took the gold and the coins, and they basically just covered it back up. But there's one other location that this leads to. And it's up in Colorado. It's a place called the Blaze. And it's a really, really, really mystical place in the high desert in Colorado in the northwest corner. And it still holds for we could do another show about it, or we could talk about the other vault that I had found in Vermont where there's tons of gold and silver strewn about the trail, just everywhere you're walking up the trail. and that Edgar Allan Poe even had written his Goldbug poem about that location using mapping systems to get to them. So if you're into orienteering and other kinds of like treasure hunts or adventures or anything like that, we can continue and do the Jesse James stuff, or we can continue and do all the other stuff about the vault that held a vassal of God. And this is one of the most incredible parts of the discovery, is because they always try and teach you, have you found Christ? In Bible school or in any of the the youth groups, and it actually tells you you're supposed to go find him, because inside the Bible in the book of Revelations are codes and ciphers that relate to Francis Bacon's original voyage with Samuel Champlain as a Rosicrucian under the Order of the Helm of the Knights of Christ in 1606 and 1607 to the land of Acadia, which is in present-day New France in Vermont. And so I have some of the most incredible stories to tell you, in photographs and videos, and you can look into that, or we can do the Jesse James as like a continuation. But I'm willing to take people to these locations just so that way they can pilgrimage to see them. You know what I mean? Like I'm not against that sort of thing where you have a Bible group or a youth group or somebody who wants to actually do missionary work, like try and go open up a gold mine and do good work for charity, or provide food for the poor, or provide homes for the homeless. Anything that can be made of it, I'm open to doing. Like I've fulfilled all of my destiny, as like a researcher, as an explorer. I have 15 pages about some of the most incredible treasure hunts that have ever been put together, pirate troves, old mysteries, things like that.
Yeah.
Everything up to like cold cases and really sinister operations that I've been given like awards for, and citations and peer reviews and stuff. And I hosted the American Cryptogram Association's annual convention in 2017 in Burlington about this vault. And we brought some of the guys that broke codes from Shakespeare on telecasts, and we did a lot of work and research in this sort of field. So I want to be able to show everybody what I found. And this is, to me, this is one of the greatest formats for doing this sort of thing. So I really appreciate everything that you've been doing for me and helping me out, getting my voice out there to everybody, because
I think it's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't get any outreach to any of the groups and association without spreading the word. And I want it to be spread for the right reasons, so people understand that there was major operations that were conducted throughout the course of American history, and that things need to change to kind of counter everything that had been done. One, of taking of the native lands from them. Two, of exploiting the people that were used as settlers, and how they, tried to force the financing and the manipulation of it. With the Beale, the closure of the Beale is the understanding that they had planned numerous operations after the Beale with the money that they had made to create some of the most sinister things, unspeakable things that they had done. And to get all that information out there is important for me, because I'm trying to get this into a multi-part series that will take you through the timeline of each one of the ciphers that relates directly to the Beale and carries on up until like 1950, of operations that were conducted in the United States, the UK, even in Russia and in France. These men were spreading their influence around the world using their finances. And so
I think what would be helpful too is just to have a short segment on like terminology and code breaking and techniques, and that kind of break that down, because sometimes
True.
I'll be honest, because you saw how confused I was as to what was
right.
Was the verbiage in the paragraph the cipher, or where was the number, the number code, the cipher.
How the verbiage was used to describe what was going on, to show you what to look for inside the ciphers. And it even shows you exactly in the verbiage, in the context of the letter, it shows you how the actual ciphers are broken down, the secret version of it, of use of the key with the alphabet. So all that information comes out when you look a little bit deeper into the arrangement of the words, how they were positioned, where certain little keys pop up, or where you find like I guess you can say like a kind of like a criminal element is popping out of a storyline, like where they talk about them being in a perilous enterprise. And I mean, it goes from just a bunch of guys being in a hunting party to all of a sudden they're involved in a military organization and all this other jazz, that just stands out as being like, two different versions of the same story. And it all comes down to them hiding a bunch of gold and exploiting. So you got to look into the context of it and then gain the general understanding of what they're doing and how they're masking their codes, which is how you show numerous examples of that to over a period of time. You gain more understanding of it, showing a consistent patterning and use of it. So it's kind of like a way that they handed it off to their members in secret and showed them, but they never really published anything. This is the first time that anybody's been able to break like 140 years of their ciphers down and be able to publish anything about it. So it's pretty monumental, and it's attracting a lot of good attention because people do have that natural curiosity. And it's not just the gold, it could have just been a puzzle that they had made, and but they put that in there because they wanted people to be envious, and they wanted people to kind of see them as like, oh, we're going to lure them out to something that they'll never find.
People love the idea of like a secret society that they've created themselves.
This was
what I
the
mean?
first.
Yeah.
This was the first. These guys were splinter cell Masons. Albert Pike was 33rd degree Mason, but he was one of the original separatists who took the initiative to try and establish a plan for 3 world wars. And I when I read about that, after I discovered all this. I was like, whoa, this totally makes sense. I was like, this guy is one of the original ringleaders of, the splinter cell government, the shadow government that was operating behind the scenes. So I wanted to try and get that info out there. And when Pop Mechanics called me, I was like, yeah!
So people can see what date and what was the what volume number. How do we go if we want to go get a copy of that or something? How do we do that?
That's the November December issues. So you just go online and you type in
you mean
Apple News.
That recent? You're talking about
it's the November. It's this issue this month that's coming out. So you are giving me like a date.
Current. I didn't realize it was
that man.
current.
We are living in the live Showtime kind of version of what's going on in this whole operation. And at the same time, I'm secretly like as quiet as possible, researching as much as I possibly can, going like, all right, I hope these guys don't say anything about what I'm doing, and then I'm like, bam, I just published the whole thing. And then I'm just like, I'm getting their attention. And then all of a sudden Popular Mechanics contacts me out of the blue. It's like, I didn't even make contact with these people, and it's like almost as if there's something so magical in the power of this cipher and its reveal that so many people have talked about it online in the media. Even the NSA keeps an archives and a file about the Beal Papers, the National Security Administration.
Wow.
Because they were like, oh man, this has got to be something sinister from back in the days of the Confederacy. It's got to be part of the problem that we have in America. And it turns out that they were right. It's a major investigation waiting to happen.
I'm surprised the Secret Service isn't involved.
Well,
who is responsible for
Secret Service? Secret Service was Pinkerton, and Pinkerton was involved in trying to track these guys down at one point.
Yeah. So, okay, that's what I was.
Let me tell you a quick story, real quick. When I first found all this stuff, I was like, oh man, some of this is probably going to be related to a train robbery of the Jesse James gang. I better go find out if anybody's got any insurance claims or any claim to the right of any of this gold or anything. So I called Pinkerton and I was like, hey, here's the information. I found all this stuff. I'm planning to go dig it. Can you check on any of the legalities? in your history records, because Pinkerton dealt with the investigations of this stuff, and they immediately contacted their people in DC. And from the chatter alone of this going around in the office of what happened, it started to bring the initiative to bring all the Confederate statues and taking all the Confederate statues down. And so this was back in 2014, 2015, and 2016 when all this began. And I faced so much backlash online from people who were like diehard for the Confederacy, or, you know, they were like, they thought they were Klan, like you were saying, it's obviously gone, but they still thought they had the heritage of it. And they were just battling me all the time. And I was constantly arguing with them. But it ends up being a catalyst to bring down all the Confederate statues that their splinter cell Mason groups had established. So now even in the military, they passed an order. So all Confederate regalias, they can't wear patches, they can't have flags in the barracks, anywhere on the bases. All the Confederate regalia and all that stuff is being washed away from the military. And so now, you know, it's helping to reform and refine things politically. But a group of people got hold of it and started using it for their own creed, for their own movement. And they started misrepresenting everything that happened. And they just started going bonkers with the whole bring the statues down sort of thing. I was like, oh, man, I better not say anything, you know, that I'm the guy that, you know, I'll be honest with you. My grandfather is mixed. And I'm part Native American and African, and they burned crosses on my grandfather's lawn in Tennessee. And so for us being Simpsons, right? Like my last name is Simpson. We date back to like Ulysses Simpson Grant, you know, of the Civil War. So we're kind of like looking at all this stuff going on, saying, you know, this is kind of a revelation for us, for our family. This is kind of like closure for our family, that we finally got justice for the whole nation of it. And for me, this is just kind of monumental, because I believe very wholeheartedly in like the anthropological roots that, you know, my father charted back to like, you know, 1640s in Maryland, and all of the other stuff that was discussed in history class. It never really touched upon all of these time periods and everything that happened throughout the course of American history. So I got invited to a Union League meeting in Philadelphia, like my dad's birthday party. They invited him there for his, you know, to host his birthday party there. Like we got a lot of prestige out of this from work, you know, and trying to maintain our I guess you could say our historical timeline of everything. And I'm trying to bring more people into that sort of understanding, because it's a part of missing American history that needs to be told, of how the country shifted into this financial menagerie. The Beal Ciphers, one of the phrases in the Beal Ciphers in those blocks is, "Oh shit, I see two ships wrecked, Olympic and Titanic." And it says, "Cut exchange limbs." They were planning to kill off the members of the Treasury of the Exchange and implement the Federal Reserve. And this is the catalyst. And this is the catalyst in the planning for that. So with the Confederate statues falling, now we have the chance to end the Fed, to end the Federal Reserve, and get back to establishing things that we need for our people by granting loans to working families, and, you know, providing things to families that they need, you know, without the manipulation of the credit system being there to control us. So I've faced a lot of hardships myself. My credit limit magically got dropped from 735 to 660 out of nowhere after all this happened. I was like, what is going on? And I had taken out numerous loans and paid them back, small business loans, you know, that sort of thing. So my credit was good at 735, right? And then out of nowhere, it just drops to 660. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? This shouldn't be happening. And so somebody's gone in and like tried to sabotage my credit. And I'm just, like I said, crazy. I don't care, because I've got bullion. I can, you know what I'm saying? Like I've got the Native American Bank in Denver that I can work with. I've got all the local mints. I've got the Scottsdale Mint ready to mint a custom coin with the gold that's from the Lost Dutchman. You know what I mean? Like I've got good things to do. I'm not really worried
Don't
financially.
be competing with the U.S. government on mint now.
Ah, that's the funny thing. I'll show you at some point some information that relates to how the Great Seal of the dollar bill was produced, and
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
it's
Well, let's
because
wrap this. Let's try to wrap
yeah,
this show up because I need to get on to bed
oh right,
tonight, and
you got
then.
it.
But I do want to do future shows. I think the Jesse James thing would be interesting,
Oh
and
yeah, definitely super huge.
um, and 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 I do think it's interesting because when we're in school, we're taught, oh, there was this gold rush and people just rushed out west and
Right,
blah
right.
blah blah blah, and then they go to the next point in history and skip over a lot of the history that you're talking about. That a lot of the things that went on, we just don't know about, and
Well,
or we're not taught about.
it
Yeah.
was just they sent everybody out west because they wanted to manifest destiny of the whole continent, and they wanted a reason to get everybody out there to say, okay, here we are, we're not leaving. And then that's when the big Indian Wars started up. So
Hmm.
we're all looking at it like, well, why did they? There's got to be a reason for all this. So
Yeah.
that's part of it. And so the natives here were accused of being the people that massacred those 30 miners, right? But this changes Arizona history, and that landmark gets changed too. They're no longer accused of being the ruthless killers that attacked everybody. They're now just being seen as people that were being historically profiled, persecuted,
Hmm.
and kind of removed by this group. But it was not the government that was doing it. It was the splinter. There were no states back in those days. States hadn't even been formed in a lot of these areas. So in order to create them as states, they had to get people out there that were willing to incorporate together and make a declaration of territories. And in order to do that, they had to just totally ignore the previous treaties that were out there that the natives had formed with the Spanish, which were supposed to be upheld at that time and just overseen by the American government. But
Hmm.
things just got out of hand when Morgan got hold of the railroads and everything like that. So that's pretty much what's talked about in the Beale. You'll see, go and look through those different breaks that I made in the different paragraphs, and you'll see the descriptions of the different types of operations they were planning. You'll see even the mention of something going on in London after that time period, no more than 3 years later, which led to the deaths of a lot of people in the East End while they were trying to move their underground railroads in to London. They were basically killing off a lot of people and leaving a lot of letters with ciphers behind. They call it the Jack the
Hmm.
Ripper sort of mystery, but it's the same group of people that moved their agents into London. They were the Confederates of London during the Civil War, and after that time, they were pioneering the railroads there. So there's a lot. It goes on through a timeline, and they all relate to ciphers, and they all relate to mysteries that have been sensationalized in the media for decades that people just don't know about. And it's
Hmm.
really cool to see it all coming together.
That is really cool. Well, we'll do it again sometime. I've got a
Yep.
couple of shows planned coming up, but maybe after those we can get back together again
Yeah,
and
maybe next month or something.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Before
yeah,
before before Christmas.
yeah. We'll try to do it before Christmas. That's a good idea.
All right, man.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate it. It was very interesting, and thanks a lot.
No worries, man. I hope we'll be able to find common ground one day. You know what I mean?
What do you mean common ground?
I'm joking about it.
I was gonna,
You're from the South. I'm some Yankee from New York, or
oh, well,
Vermont.
you have family you said you had family in
I know.
Tennessee,
I
so
know. We are as
I'm
Tennessee.
a progressive Tennessean.
I know. I can tell you're into the internet, man. I love
Yeah.
that too. And I never really believed that there was a secession of states. I just joke about it, man, because I'm the guy that brought the statues down. You know what I mean? I'm the guy that
Yeah, I mean,
motivated it.
people in Tennessee aren't as. I mean, there are still hillbillies left, but most people are pretty. We're pretty
Oh, I know.
forward. We don't like the image the old South too much. That's
Oh, I
why I was
know.
kind of pushing
And
back against the Klan stuff because that's just we like to think of that as stuff in the past.
well,
And
my my family also believes in the same thing, and my friends were telling me, man, this has got to get out, and people got to be educated about this, because there's no way to figure out why these things even happened, or why, like, why people are siding with each other and become separatists and fighting each other. So it's a great unifying kind of theory that's behind it, that the more you realize what's going on, the more you educate yourself about it, the more you realize it was just a couple of guys that had plotted and schemed and started bribing a bunch of people to do things on their behalf.
Yeah.
And we all got ripped off in the end of it. So,
All right, I gotta go to bed. Thank you. I
no
appreciate
worries,
it.
man. No
All right.
worries.
We'll see you.
Come see the gold mines when you get some time, okay?
Okay, sounds
All
fun.
right.
Sounds like
All
fun.
right.
All
No
right,
worries.
see ya. All right, that was interesting. Thanks everybody who came to say hello. Salty, Tic Tac Guy, Richard. Thanks for coming, and stay tuned. We have more interesting shows coming, and thanks for watching.